Hello there, my name is James Baldwin and welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast. In this episode, we chat with a man that you probably know the voice of, Josh Revell. And I'm joined by my friend and yours, it's Thomas J. Camp. G'day, mate.
Hello, boys. How are you?
Yes, doing very well. And let me do the Daniel Ricciardo McLaren welcome to Emma Gilmore when she was announced to McLaren as the Extreme E driver. Kia ora, Josh. As an Australian, it sounded really bad.
Kia ora. Yeah, that's... I have to abandon the Kia ora, and go with Kia ora. But it's all very well good. Adapt or die, I suppose.
Yeah, there you go. Look, mate, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Certainly a lot of our listeners will know your voice. They'll know your caricature at least, and maybe the first time they're seeing your face. So it's good to have you here, mate. I wanted to start right at your very beginning if we could, because of course we know that you're having some good success at the moment with YouTube content creation. But take me back, man. What was growing up in New Zealand like, and what was the sort of first level or introduction of motorsports in your life?
I think really for a lot of kids growing up, it all starts with cars, model cars, all that stuff. And I was fascinated by them for one reason or another. And first introduction to proper motorsport was through DVD highlights of the 2001 V8 Supercars season. So I was fascinated by that. First PlayStation game that I bought I didn't buy it, obviously. But that was Formula One 2001. So,
wow.
Yeah, 2001 was really the sort of catalyst for everything. And I mean, to cut a long story very, very short, they sort of started this whole sort of love affair I had with the sport that continues to this day. And yeah, in a very boring way. That's how it all was introduced to me.
Mate, PlayStation 1 and F1 2001, not a bad way to start.
Was that the championship edition that is almost near impossible to find a copy of anywhere these days? Was that for PlayStation 2?
There may have been the 2001. I'm not sure. I don't know if 2001 had a championship edition. I'm not too sure. All I do know is that they had this competition, which I obviously couldn't do back then at 5. Where you try to beat this time set by Jenson Button or Giancarlo Fisichella. Hopefully it was Fisichella, would have been a lot easier. And you won something. I can't remember, but I was thinking it must be cool to do that. So I mean, for sure, It would have been cool, of course, but I don't know if there ever was a championship edition of F1 2001. So, yeah,
well,
we can't help you out there.
I'm sure we can go and Google that later. Mate, you mentioned V8 Supercars. So that's interesting. Of course, we talk about Formula One. That's the whole point. The whole point of this podcast, though, was to get more Australians involved in the world of loving Formula One. But, of course, a lot of our motorsport love started with V8 Supercars back when Holden Ford actually made cars, semi-locally rather than just shells driving around on frames that no one really gives a damn about anymore. In 2001, so like that sort of Skaife, that kind of era, was he kind of one of the people that you were looking up to and went, geez, that's a bloody good bloke?
5 years old, you're gullible as hell, you don't know a damn thing, so you just look at the person who leads and just like, he's the best, I like him. And so with it being 2001, 2002, yeah, I naturally looked at Mark Skaife and I thought, he's a swell guy. Then I met him. Not quite a swell guy, but you can drive.
That's how Craig Lowndes has managed to have a fan base for the last 20 years.
If you ignore his text messages, then yes. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Greg Murphy was kind of the same as well. He was, he really was, and kind of still is a folk hero here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Until you meet him. Yeah, it's a very, very different world when you actually meet some of these people. But you still respect how they drive, what they do, and so forth. But yeah, 2001 season, that was the HRT team was dominating. Ambrose just debuted. Lowndes went over the Ford. DJR had a great season until pretty much post-Bathurst, and then they all just fell to pieces. And Larry Perkins was, for some reason, still racing at the age of 309. He was still driving well, though, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's ingrained in my head that season for sure. And yeah, honestly, watching those races really, like, it was really V8 Supercars. Formula One was a sort of come along later thing because, of course, I mean, now it's bad enough to watch it because it's at really rancid times. But back then, even at the rancid times that it was on, it was days late, you know, highlighted packages that you would see on the preceding Sunday. Brutal, mate, brutal.
It's honestly nice to talk to someone who has equally terrible time frames to watch the sport. And I don't know if you sort of get up and watch it live like sometimes we do, but certainly the last couple of races this season have been absolute death. So
I mean, Qatar.
The 4 a.m.
race. The race start was 3 a.m. and that is the worst possible start. It's too early to get up and it's too late to stay up.
Yes. And of course, something will happen inevitably. It's like Grosjean's crash last year. That was the race that we decided to stay up and do a podcast straight afterwards. And of course, not only one, but your mate Lance Stroll's Leisurely Stroll's crash being inverted as well. It's like
I don't got beef with Stroll anymore. It's just some of the stories that you hear about what happened in his junior career, you just look at it and you just go, wow. That's motor racing, I suppose. But I guess we can get into them later and stop deviating off course. But yeah, I mean that it is just a crappy thing about being in this side of the world. It's just these really rancid times. And then, of course, once we do have something that's good, like, for example, Austin, the US, you know, where for you guys it'd be like, what, a 5, 6 a.m. start, which is just like, it's bearable. Yeah. But then you have these Europeans complaining, I have to stay up until 10. It's like,
dude,
I feel your hardship. I really do.
Yeah, please cry me a river of Sky F1 dribble. That's all we want to hear. Well, mate, that's, look, an interesting time. I think, honestly, sort of that period of V8 Supercars really for, you know, Campy and I are similar age, the early 30s, at that sort of peak moment of teenage years watching motorsport, especially down this part of the world, that's when it was really, really good. As you mentioned, Formula One's very difficult to watch, you know, back then, days late, as you said. But as you started getting towards F1 then, what was it for you? How did you sort of fall more in love with it? Was there a certain personality? Was there a driver? Was it Schumacher? Like, you know, or a combination of all of that?
I think really back then, a lot of people looked at Michael with admiration. Again, the majority of all of this was introduced through video games because, of course, you know, me being a child back then, staying up for these races was not an option. And, you know, you're going to catch the highlights on the Sunday on free-to-air television. So, like, it was just buying year after year the game. And I think I definitely was watching the highlights as well. So it was those two things. And, of course, you'd go for the Ferrari, you'd go for Michael Schumacher, and it was just that sort of natural, you know, follow the leader. The same with Mark Skaife, you know. And of course, when I was that young as well, I just thought anytime he got beaten, the other guy must be cheating. I never thought for a moment that there may be someone out there who was, I don't know, a little bit more naturally gifted.
Impossible.
So,
no, could never happen. Not to my driver.
So what's the hook for you these days? What keeps you coming back? Because I know our partners, James, are very critical of why we watch these races and why we watch cars continuing to go around. What's the draw card for you these days?
It gives me less and less reasons when they do certain things like put races in Saudi Arabia. Yes. It's just like, we need a race in Africa. Oh, yeah, it would help diversity and branch out to all the world. No, let's go where all the oil money and other less PG things that we probably can't say on this podcast out there. And I know I'm on a no-fly list to Jeddah at this very moment. But, you know, like there's the internal politics, which you understand when you actually work inside a paddock. That's something I say to people about the sport. Do you love it? good. Don't go in a paddock. Don't find out how the sport is actually run, because it will very much test you as to whether or not you want to be in it any longer. So, of course, it gives me lots of different reasons to not want to do it anymore. But ultimately, it's a very difficult thing to explain. I think, like for racing connoisseurs, for petrol heads or whatever, I don't think you can really put a finger on it with regards to what hooks you in the sport. It really just is everything that encompasses it. And, the history of the sport, the ever-expanding history, I think with recency bias, we look at people like Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, we're just like, not as good as Alain or Ayrton. It's like, well, you know what? The reality is they might be. And if they are, you got to think about what we're witnessing here, Yep. So, I mean, it's that knowledge that sort of makes me think, well, we are watching history forevermore. And, I just love the sport to the extent where I don't know if anything is going to eradicate that. And then, of course, Saudi Arabia thing definitely helps.
Tell us what you really think, mate. We're not a PG podcast. I give my political opinions as often and as
frequently as
I can. So don't hold back.
I genuinely can't say what's on my mind right now, even with how outspoken I am.
We can all just take a moment to imagine what you're thinking, and we probably
if
be
I'm
pretty
censoring
correct.
what I'm saying, that kind of says everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's good to. It's just a whole vibe. It's that sort of ties in with Lakeside Drive, though.
That's one of the things I love about your videos, mate, and I do congratulate you for what you actually do in that content space. I think you ask all the big questions in a somewhat cynical way, but the delivery of it, and then you've got a beautiful voice as well. I think it is absolutely cracking, and no, we got to encourage you where we can, because no doubt there'll be some banter to come. But
campy gushing podcast at 11 minutes. Didn't take long.
I've been a big fan of your videos for a long time, mate. But how do you state, I love the way you are cynical about the sport, because it is very easy to do at times, but you do it in a way that's very well constructed, and we know where you're coming from and we know where you stand with a lot of things, but it's sort of shaded in a bit of elusiveness.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think there are things in the sport which, honestly need answers to them. Why is this person racing? Why are we racing here? Yep. Why is whatever? I was going to come up with something there, but my mind just blurred on me. But yeah, I mean, it really that's the whole channel's conception. It was just down to no one's talking about this, and I don't understand why. And I guess we can morph into the sort of why did I start the channel thing here. There was that first video of Andrea Moda back in 2018, I think. And back then I wanted to make a proper sort of documentary style one, because, I just like that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm, but you'll see throughout the video, just ignore all the obvious problems with that video. Namely, the microphone being terrible. You'll see throughout the video that it just gets progressively more into the style of what I do. And I think I just naturally ascended to that. Having watched people like Alex Myers and so forth, and how they brought across their topics, which I normally wouldn't give a damn about, but how they did it. It's like, I want to do that style of video. Not copy it, but that sort of basic concept. And of course, as I said, there are so many things that no one talks about. Even today, I've been running now for 2-3 years, whatever it is, and I've still got ideas for years, because there's just so many things to talk about in the sport. Now there are videos that I've literally had on ice now since the end of 2019, and it's just that they've just been pushed back constantly, because there are other things that have come into the fold. So yeah, it's all about really preaching to the masses about stuff that they're not sure they knew about, but they're glad that they did.
Well,
and all that.
Take us through that journey then, because obviously there's a lot of content. We are one of, especially through lockdown, another 4 million Formula One podcasts that do race reviews and previews and everything else. And whilst we like to think we're special, we're really not. And I think Campy's exceptionally, on the money when it comes to talking about how you ask the hard questions and do it in such a way that is very unique. And of course, I think if anyone else then tried to come along afterwards, it would be an immediate comparison, for good or for bad. That's just what it is. But what was the point when you found that content gap and went, apart from obviously just wanting to do the doco style thing, which is great, really from a content making point of view, applaud that for sure. What other kind of content were you consuming at the time, and what was the sort of push for you to go, right, I'm just going to bloody do it and make a video?
I think there were a couple other channels. Alex Meyer's been one of them, Squidge Rugby being another one, where they brought across the content in a way which was, with Squidge Rugby, not so much. He was a bit more technical than that, bloody Welsh. Is that they compartmentalized everything and they brought it down to a level which you can actually ascertain and added in humor or whatever. I'm not purposely trying to make stuff funny. It's just what I say. It just so happens that people laugh at it for some reason. The Andrea Motor video blew up 6 months after I made it for some reason. And the immediate consensus from the public after that video was just like, wow, that microphone is crap. But I also realized at that time, I've got something here. There's actually people that have subsequently subscribed to the channel. So, okay, I got something here. I got the opportunity to therefore push forward the new concept. And the first video I made on that new sort of concept was UGE Day. And on the day that I was meant to upload it, the file corrupted. And I was just like, all that bloody effort all to naught. Okay. I was just like, I gotta make something quick. What's just quick and easy to do? Oh, let's talk about the Zeltvig course. No one ever asked that question before. The first Austrian Grand Prix venue back in 1964. The only Grand Prix that Lorenzo Bandini ever won. And I made that in a quick short time. I released it, and there were people who were subbed and watched it, and they're like, "This is something." It's like, cool, whatever. I just want to upload stuff.
Yeah.
I think the first video that ever got 1,000 views was WTF Happened to Dan Ticktum. And that whole WTF series is another whole bag of beans. But yeah, I was stoked when that happened. And then after Ticktum was drafted into the Williams Academy, someone shared it on WTF1's forums, and it just started to spiral from there. And then it's like, okay, 1,000 subs, 5,000, 10,000. It's like, whoa, hang on. I didn't expect this.
I don't know.
And that whole WTF series, I've had requests up the rectum for that. It's just like, are you going to do WTF on this guy and this guy and this guy? It's like, WTF isn't just going to be slapped on people. It's about coming from a peak and then going through either a roller coaster or whatever. Like, it's like, for example, Ricardo Rossi is a random one, but, people will think, oh, well, he was just a guy that came for 2 years and sucked. It's like, well, no. He was vice champion of Formula 3000 in his first year.
Wow.
And then he came in and is regarded one of the worst drivers ever. Like, how the hell did that happen? Then, like, the recent one, Felipe Massa.
Yeah.
1 year challenging for the world championship, and then he just completely drowned at Ferrari.
Never had a win after it.
What happened there? And especially when Rob Smedley said he lost no pace. So what was going on there? So that's the whole consensus for WTF, which is why it's only used sparingly, because I'm obviously going to run through a hell of a lot of people in a very short time span. So, okay, what else can you do? Nothing. That's it.
Yeah.
But that's really how it all started. And I still do the videos for the same reason that I did back then. It's about talking about stuff that no one else talks about. And at the end of this year, I'm definitely going to be talking about something that no one else talks about much. A certain driver who is in Formula 2 who, should we say, probably shouldn't be in there right now. But more on that later.
Yes, as in right now. Not as in 2 days ago, but right now.
Right now.
Interesting.
Right now.
Yes. Well, there you go. It's not going to be an unhappy moment for this part of the body of water between us, though.
Staying with the videos for a second, mate. The one that introduced me to your channel was the Mahavir Raghunathan video. And I tell you what, from the moment I saw that, I was absolutely hooked. The storytelling of that guy's story is incredibly complex, and where does he get his money from to do the things he's done? But the way he did that was absolutely fantastic, and that, I think, for me, that's the one that got me hooked on everything you've done. So talk us through, because he has been, like, he does show up from time to time on some esports things, and the other drivers make jokes at him, and they seem to be in jokes, but that was the one. Talk me through that.
Yeah, so I'm a connoisseur of junior formula, and 2019 came about, and a very late deal, MP announced, we've signed Mahavir Raghunathan. And it's just, now back then we didn't know, back then we didn't know what was the horror that was about to ensue. But like, I looked at this guy's name when he was announced. I'm like, that rings a bell. And I looked through his junior career, and I'm like, oh boy, we're in for something here. He'll probably be about a second off the pace of his teammate, maybe. He'd be about 2 or 3 seconds off. And this is the thing, I remember someone saying, oh, you've wrecked his career. It's like, no, we were talking about this before the damn video came out. The video just summarized everything that happened there. It was a complete freak show what happened. And I mean, I got no reservations for Mahavir personally, but it's just, you either belong in the sport at that level or you don't. And, I just summed up just the complete clown circus that happened that year, especially at Monaco, him getting 24 penalty points, being disqualified from the rounds, going through a loophole, everything like that. And, that's Monaco cut deal. I just stumbled on that Superman-based music at that time. And it's just one of those sort of light bulb moments where it's just like, okay, I could do this. I definitely didn't get, shall we say, a happy email from, let's say, a family relative about that. But I think about 2 or 3 seconds after feeling bad, after reading the email, I rightly drew the conclusion of just like, we were already talking about this dude before the video came out. I'm just summarizing his career, and more to the point, it's not like it's a weird damn thing with this video. Like, if we saw Mahavir in the paddock or just by the trackside, you wouldn't just think, oh, he's a crap driver or whatever. You'd probably just think, hey, you're Mahavir. Like, come on, get a photo, autograph, all that stuff. It's this weird thing where he's almost into a cult hero now. And I'm not trying to justify me tearing him apart. I don't want an out for that. I did what I did. But it's more just like, ultimately, he's more sort of, he's seen more in a positive light than what that video was probably meant to do at the end of the day. It's a weird effect. But, I mean, that video is wholly stemmed out of the fact that this dude had a horror 2019 and it needed to be covered. It needed to be shown. And that this type of driver didn't belong on the grid. And thankfully, he wasn't there in 2020. And then 2021 came along. It's like, oh, okay, we got your predecessor. Nice. Successor, I should say. But nah, like, I've got no sort of reservations about making videos about people.
Yeah.
If you get my attention for the wrong reasons, It's just
Well, you mentioned that you're a connoisseur of the junior formulas, and I love junior formulas. And as we all have on this podcast, especially last year, we said time and time again, please watch F2 and F3 because the racing is significantly better than the Premier Class in F1. No, absolutely right. But for your mind, when was your first sort of glimpse into that? Was it the back GP2 kind of era? And I think, I mean, a lot of your videos more recently, especially with, Dan Ticktum and looking at Joe and Piastri and all those sort of other guys, it's sort of now overarching this story arc that I think Formula One has failed a little bit in, especially in recent years, and paying more attention to Formula 2 and Formula 3 and bringing that up in notoriety as much as they've done with Formula One. What was your introduction to the junior formulas, and then why pursue them? Because as I said, I think you're a big part of the reason as to why it's getting more people from the Formula One side and potentially from the WTF1 kind of equivalent style forums is because of your videos.
Yeah. My hook on it is basically that this is the new generation of talent. However they get to Formula One, you're going to see the next bundle of talent coming through here. It's not like back in the days where you could just turn up with 10 million euros of Pablo Escobar's money like Ricardo Londono did back in 1981 and just get into a Formula One seat. It doesn't work like that anymore. So you are going to see the next crop of talent coming through. And it's fun just to see which ones are the outstanding talents. And you can see them. Like when you take, I think my first introduction to the junior series was Lewis Hamilton back in GP2 2006.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, there's a thing about certain drivers where, I mean, there's obviously lots of really, really good talents out there, but then occasionally one will come along. It's just like, well, this guy is just a cut above the rest. Like, it's undeniable. Like, it's George Russell's another one, Max Verstappen as well. And now Oscar Piastri's coming through in a lesser extent, not so much in outright speed, but he just gets the results. And ultimately, results win championships. In case one didn't know of that concept. But yeah, that was it. And I think the thing that really made me a lot more interested in it was when Mitch Evans got to GP3 from the Toyota Racing Series. And then obviously I'd watch all of those and then I just got more hooked in it. I'm just seeing, who these next crops of talents are, and now it's, for me, just watching these random Italian F4 races at 2 a.m. when I got insomnia. It's just like, well, at least let me see how many Italians have got daddy's money to blow this way. Oh, 54? Okay. But yeah, it's fun watching them come through. But, you talked about how Formula One's failing to bring in the... What's a good way to describe this? The best talents. I think it's a very rounded way to go about it. There's always been a problem with regards to the best talents getting there, or at least the best talents having no money. I think everyone that you see in Formula 2 has got an incredible amount of backing to them. The difference is, you take Narayan Karthikeyan, and he was priced out of Midland F1 in 2006. They purposely put a price tag up, so they said, "You're not getting in here. I promise you, you're not going to get in here." And I think it was like, what, 5 million euros?
That's nothing.
It's like 5 million euros nowadays probably wouldn't even get you a freaking test drive.
Yeah.
It's just, let alone a Grand Prix seat. No, Latifi's paying 30 million, I think, a year.
Yeah.
How can you compare against that? Like, that's the problem, really, at the end of the day. It's not that drivers have to pay to get in Formula One. It's just that they have to pay a lot more now to get in Formula One. Now, when I look at the Joe Piastri situation, I'm not totally hung up on it as a lot of other people would be. From my standpoint, and I know that the Shanghai government really has gotten behind Joe for this. I mean, no, seriously, they have.
Yeah.
No.
I'm not making that up, honestly. And a lot of governments do support their drivers. I remember here for Toyota Racing Series, Rui Andrade came in and sponsored by the whole nation of Angola. It's just like the Angolan government sponsoring something motorsport related. The last time that happened, they had corruption charges. But like ultimately, Zhou's coming in with the money to be at Alfa Romeo, and God knows where they're going to be. All I do know is that Zhou's not going to be at Alfa Romeo in 2023 because they're bringing in Teo Pourchaire to partner partner the guy that's got no fight. And so that means he'll probably
ragging on all the
Williams.
On all the honorary Australians at the moment. We're going to have to...
Valtteri's very, very fast. I just do not like how he races. And that he doesn't really race. So, I mean, Zhou would then have to go off to something like Williams or whatever, and there's this whole sort of... It doesn't appear that Alpine were ever going to take him over Piastri. Piastri seems to be... And I think the crucial thing is he's got the backing of Alpine and he's got the backing of Alain Prost. Mm-hmm. And having that over a Grand Prix drive in 2022, I'd rather he waits until 2023, gets into Alpine with either Fernando or Esteban, and goes at it from there with all factory backing and the and under the guise of someone like Prost and whoever's going to be in the team at that time. So it's about getting in there right, because of course, you know, you take Sergei Sorokin, a weird example, but you take Sergei Sorokin, who probably was better than Lance that year, but it was just the lack of opportunity thereafter that killed his career. So I'd rather him wait a year than just have a career that's snuffled out in an instant in the case of one bad year against Valtteri, you know?
Yeah, I think that's exceptionally well put, and certainly the conclusion that we came to as well. Whilst it would have been nice to be in a Formula One seat for 2022, he'll also be able to learn the ropes a little bit by being part of the team. And, you know, as you said with Alain Prost, but also Mark Webber, and the connections politically and financially, if necessary, a little bit later down the track, that he would potentially bring is a good thing. Especially.
Do you think it gets worse? We've got, 5 genuine pay drivers on the grid at the moment. Do we think as we grow coming through the sport, you know, in 5 or 6 years' time, it'll be 50-50 pay? You know, the top teams will have the best drivers and that's where the championship fight will be, but everyone else is paying.
I think something that we all have to remember here is you take, so these 5 pay drivers, let's see how they are. You got Stroll, who I think he's not creme de la creme, but he's good in a sense that when he's on it, he's bloody good, especially when it rains and I don't know, just whenever the hell he wants to turn up, which is once in a blue moon.
Yeah, 1 in 22 races.
This year it's been that.
And in general, he's all right. You know, I can't really object to him being in there too much, but you know, it's all a can of worms talking about his involvement being in there and his junior series antics and whatever. Latifi, he's up against George Russell, which is a hard yardstick, but he's, you know, I said, give this guy 2 years. Let's just see where he is. And right now, again, not creme de la creme, not on George Russell's level, but he's not too far below him. So it's not
competent.
It's competent driver, exactly. Nikita Mazepin, yeah, no excuse, get out. Zhou, again, I think we've got to give this guy time. My whole thing with Zhou is that he's quick. He's got speed, but he doesn't get results. Like, I don't know why. I was watching his junior career, and I saw him when he was here in New Zealand for the Toyota Racing Series, and you could see he was quick. It's just like, you look at the results sheet, it's like, like, you got 3 8th places, and that's your best one. Hang on, weren't you top in qualifying? Like, it's this weird disposition with him where it's like his speed doesn't translate. And I mean, is it much of an excuse? Probably not. But what we should emphasize is that he does know how to drive a car. Unlike Mazepin at the moment is drowning badly. And who's the other pay driver we're thinking of?
Italian Jesus, but he's gone now. So
I wouldn't say he was a paid driver. He was more just in Ferrari's pocket. But I mean,
no,
I
who
think,
is
honestly,
there? There's another one. Right.
he was so. I mean, Gio, like, he didn't do too much right, but he didn't do too much wrong either. He was just sort of there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He was the F1 equivalent of the nation of Belgium. It's like, wow, you exist. Cool, move on.
Congratulations.
You're great for a weekend.
You're a sovereign state. Good. We're not going to travel to you or whatever, but well done. You did your job.
Yeah, certainly a lot of interesting storyline. And look, again, you definitely pick out a lot of them. So for you then, talk us through what a typical weekend looks like. Obviously, you're not doing non-evergreen content, which is most of what we do, which is race review stuff. So just personally, talk us through what you do in terms of watching those. If you're Insomniac and you're watching Italian F4, then I mean, I assume you watch everything live.
I mean, truthfully, I only watch the real grassroots Junior Formula F, again, if I'm struggling to sleep or whatever. But GP, not GP3, Formula 3, Formula 2, I do stay up for them because they are the final stepping stones. You are going to see these kids going through to Formula 1. And so I will stay up for them, of course, because, if you commentate on Twitter, on social media, and you're going to, if you get a tweet that hits, that bangs, then you're going to attract people. Oh, they follow you. Oh, who's this geezer I just followed? He's got a YouTube channel. Watch it. Oh, his accent's annoying, but he's got relatively entertaining stuff. Cool, sweet, subscribe. So it all sort of translates, to have that live upkeep. And also, I'm not one for sort of seeing things late. I'd rather just watch them live, you know what I mean? But it's going to be tricky this weekend that we're recording because got the Saudi Grand Prix on and, of course, the 1000, which for an Australasian motorsport fan, you can't miss the 1000 for sure.
No.
But
okay. So that's your weekend of watching racing, though. But I am a little interested, and we'll go back to more of your content creation because I'm interested in your process around that. You said you've got heaps of video ideas on ice. I'm sure you've got enough content probably for the rest of your life with stuff that just keeps happening, like the announcement that was made either earlier today or yesterday afternoon. I can't remember when it was, which you'll be prioritizing that video now ahead of the 2019 videos. I know, and a lot of people know what it takes to create content, but talk us through going from where you started, probably having full-time work and then deciding to not have full-time work, if that isn't in fact the case, committing to this sort of life and backing yourself into that and the whole processes that you go through to put a video together.
Yeah. So I guess I could start off with the process of making a video first and then sort of talk about how it became a full-time thing.
Great.
So in a week under the full-time moon, I suppose. So you start off with a concept, an idea. So let's take the Massa one. I think I had Massa I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I positioned it in between Grand Prix because I thought, well, the interest isn't going to be in any particular Grand Prix, so it's a down period. Let's put something relatively modern or whatever into the fray. So I try and script as much as I can before the start of the whole week, which is on Friday. If I can't, then I start there anyway. And you start it with a sort of a consensus. Like, okay, so what's this video about? Not who is it about, what is it about? In this case, it's talking about the career of Felipe Massa and the sort of turbulent era that it went through, but also reminding people that despite this rocky period, he did drive bloody well. And the 2008 season deserves its kudos. So, like that's all laid out to bear. And it's like, okay, cool, I got a direction. Then you research meticulously. And I'm talking about watching flat out races, just witnessing the behavior of these drivers, how they're driving. Because it's one thing to look at a results sheet and say, oh, look, this guy didn't do very well or whatever. But if you look at the halfway mark of this season, you'd think, oh, Latifi was a better driver than Russell. And we know that's not the case. So you go back and watch these races and you try and digest what's happening in front of you, how this guy's driving, what he's going through. Why didn't he get these results? And what did he do to achieve the results that he did? So once you've done all that, I'm just talking about watching the races. You also get other resources, insider info. You chat to people who were potentially working at Sauber, Ferrari, or Williams or whatever. You do everything you can to get as much resources as you can and script the video out in 2 days or less. Which is not enough time, but it has to be done. There is no way that it can actually be done either way. Like, it has to be done in that time.
Yeah.
Because especially if you have a sponsor on the video, you have to get everything in this sort of video up to the sponsored advertisement done, send it off to the sponsor, who hopefully will approve it within the 3 days that they say they will. In the meantime, you finish the rest of the video, and it's not uncommon lately for me to be sinking 80, 90 hours in a week, every single week throughout the year. And it's just like, I remember in a recent video, someone's just like, oh, you're not very enthusiastic about Lewis and the junior career. It's like, I'm exhausted. I am freaking exhausted right now. I'm dying. But more to the point, I was just thinking, hang on. So you're saying that I'm not hyping Lewis up in the same way that this junior talent is not quite an F1 yet, the same way that he is. I'll tell you why. Lewis is kind of already in Formula One.
Kind of.
And this other kid, I'm trying to hype him up as the future. Lewis doesn't need hyping up. He's the best in the world, for goodness sake. Like, and anyone who doesn't see that is blind. Like, I mean, I don't know why I need to further emphasize this. Okay, hang on. I'll say it clearly into the microphone. Lewis Hamilton is the GOAT, no question. Or was that not enthusiastic enough?
There's just a hint of sarcasm there that I don't know if you're being honest, Joshy.
You reckon you got a sarcasm meter over there?
If anyone does, Campy is the person who would have that.
Jeez. But no, I mean, so obviously just fun banter. But so yeah, just complete them when you can. So I'm normally getting these videos done on the Thursday Arvo, typically. And what's really nerve-wracking as well is that I try and make sure that everything that I do is about as clean cut, shall we say. And I've got good standing with social media teams at Formula One, Supercars, Toyota Racing Series. They're all great people. I love them to death. And so I've got good standing with them, and I know that, okay, everything's relatively fine in Danny. I just have to be careful with what I use. But then it's also the music, because sometimes you get stuff from a royalty-free website. So, okay, this copyright-free, whatever. So, okay, cool, sweet. Take your word for it. Then you use it. It's like, wrong, copyright. It's like, what? You said it was free. Like, and then you have to delete the video, go back into the editing process, and then put in, replacement audio. All the while, the export for some of these videos is about an hour.
Yep.
Maybe 2. And it's like, okay, I'm hours out from release. This is not what I need. So sometimes it'll be done 2 or 3 hours before the release, the scheduled release. And at that point, because I'm always on artificial stimulants to get me through and just keep my mind focused, it's 2 or 3 in the morning. It's just like, okay, I'm pumped up on coffee. Shit. Just because the video is being released at 5 a.m. and here I am at 2 a.m. pumped up on these stimulants. Oh, Lord save me. But of course, again, it's Friday. and you have to begin work again.
Yeah.
Luckily, this week I've got no video coming out on the Friday. It's all coming out on Wednesday next week. So I've got a couple of days where I managed to sort of rest. But I think the day before recording this video was one of those days, and I think it will just hit me. I'm just like, oh, I'm just peached. I'm just totally knackered. But of course, you know, that's the full-time benefits, you know. Back in when it wasn't full-time and I was working a regular job that was full-time, it was hard. So about the time I hit 20,000 subscribers, I went to the Toyota Racing Series at Hampton Downs. And there were a few people there that were they were big fans of the channel. That was cool. And ironically, that was the weekend that I released the Mahavir episode. I remember that. I was speaking to Axel Noss in the paddock, and just like, oh man, I was loving that video. It's like, cool. But you're the racing driver. I'm just the loudmouth malcontent on YouTube. I should be happy to see you.
Yeah.
But that weekend I met Mark Pitch, who runs Autocar New Zealand and has a long successful history in New Zealand motorsport. And I always wanted to be a journalist, but it was just sort of, you know, out of reach in school because they cancelled classes conveniently. And I was steered in the computer science area, which I did not enjoy. And I worked as an HP engineer for 2 or 3 years. I didn't enjoy it in the slightest, but, you know, they offered me a job as a journalist at Autocar. It's like, cool, sweet, cool. Sounds the business, and I can work from home too. Awesome. This was 2020, January, February. So this was before the end of the world happened. And yeah, so I worked there. But the thing with being a journalist is that it's not a 9-to-5 job.
No.
It's 24/7. So I was like, oh, crap. Okay, this isn't great. I'm supposed to be doing, I have to do a video this week, but at the same time, I meant to stay up and report on the Formula One race. Releasing content at 6 a.m., you know, and staying up to release it all through the day and micromanaging 2 websites as well. And I think January. That's a very big. You know,
It's a big window.
Big window, yes. May, June, I looked at the channel. I was like, it's dying. Nothing's being released. And I knew I was earning just enough to meet minimum wage back then. I was like, okay, I got a choice here. Either continue with journalism or make a run of it in YouTube. It took 2 weeks to make the decision, but I thought there's so much I could do with YouTube. And even now, there's still a lot I reckon I can do with it. It's just, again, time constraints and all that jazz. And outsourcing work's kind of hard for my type of videos. But I made the decision to quit a full-time job with guaranteed pay in the middle of a pandemic for something that is determined based on how your videos do in a month.
What could possibly go wrong?
In that first month, it was kind of interesting. No, minimum wage here is about $3,000 a month. And I got the first paycheck from Google for my first time as a full-time YouTuber, $700. Not good, especially when Auckland is the most expensive city in the world. But since then, it's gotten to a point where it's, I won't say the exact figure, obviously, because, you know, for privacy reasons, but it's comfortable, shall we say. Yeah. And, you know, it's just eternally grateful for it. Yeah, the work schedule's intense, but, you know, I think really when you just have a look at where I've been and where I am now, it's like, well, say no more, really. So, yeah, but, you know, I think back when I was full-time work, videos were getting released once every 2 or 3 weeks because that whole process was spread out over those weeks. So it was a bit more harder back then. But, yeah, that's it nowadays. If I'm lucky, 70 hours a week of work is about a happy average of what goes into the videos, including for the one I'm doing now. So what could you do?
And you got to love it, don't you? I mean, it's one of those things that and I know plenty of people want to get onto YouTube to make money, and that's their whole thing. It's like, I want to start a channel to have views, to have subscribers, because often people will. And look, maybe there's some of our listeners. Some of our listeners may not have watched your stuff yet, and if that is the case, then please, I encourage you to do so. You're almost lucky in that respect because you've got a back catalogue of stuff to go through, and you're obviously more established than you were back then. But was there a moment that after you made that decision where subscribers really started to increase, and did you make the decision to be like, hey, let's really push the like and subscribe thing because, that's now what I am relying heavily on to try and make up the $2,300 that I need to meet minimum wage for a month in Auckland?
I mean, I don't try and push it. It's part of the outgoing sort of outro, of course, but that's sort of uniform. In general, if people want to subscribe and like and all that jazz, cool. But I don't try and push people into it because I know for a lot of people it's annoying, It just seems wanty. So come on, I'm not good enough to, to do it just naturally. No, see that button, press it, whatever. It's just like I'm pretty casual about it. Of course, I got my goals of subscribers and all that stuff. But, again, I still make it for the same reason I did before. So therefore, my priorities haven't really changed too much. And I don't feel I have to push it anymore, I just feel that, if people want to subscribe, they'll subscribe, as how I normally look at it. And if I have to improve myself to increase the flow of subs, then that's just a reality that I'm going to have to accept. And I know that there are things I want to improve on, lots of things. But, until I do that, maybe the flow won't be quite as good as maybe I'd want it to be. I don't know. Just, again, the whole, like and subscribe thing, showing stats saying only X amount of you who watch my videos are subscribed. It's just like, it just feels, It feels there's a certain insecurity to that almost. And I know people will be like, oh, you put that subscribe thing up there before. It's like, yeah, well, to be honest with you, my parents have been bugging me to put that up there. It's like, okay, see, Mom, Dad, I put this in the video. Can you stop bugging me now? But yeah, again, I'm pretty casual about it all. It's free world, I suppose.
One of the things that I think would have helped though, and was of bloody great surprise and big joy, especially for me, was seeing your name pop up on Formula One's official YouTube channel for your F2 mid-season review. I was like, oh, cool. Yep, new Josh video. This is the F1. What the
It was so hard for me to kick that embargo. I tell you that for free. It's just like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm on the Formula One YouTube channel.
Yeah.
They contacted me about a month before that happened. And it was just like a proper Formula One email address. I'm like, oh shit.
What have I done?
What have I done? What have I done this time? I've been contacted by Mahavir's family. I've been contacted by Deleta's lawyers. What have I done with Formula One? Okay, quite a lot, but what did I do? And it was the head of media who contacted me. He's just like, hey, Josh, we're all big fans of your channel. I'm like, really? Okay, that's a surprise. Are you interested in doing a collab video? I'm like, yeah, okay, that'd be pretty cool. But that was the thing though. Like, I did speak to them, and they generally do like content creators out there. And I think when I heard that, I was like, that is total music to my ears, because this is something that I genuinely hoped Formula One would engage with. Yep. It's not that I'm trying to rip content and benefit off of purely their stuff. I'm trying to get across the history and the general sport in itself in a medium which they don't do.
Yeah.
Simply because I love the sport, not because I'm trying to piggyback off of what they've done. And sometimes I branch off to other stuff that I want to do, talking about, for example, Michel Mouton or the Le Mans story in 1953 where the two blokes bloody well drove around with brandy and broken noses from birds that flew into their windscreens. You know, it's just those stories in motorsport that you just need to tell.
Yeah.
So when that happened, it was just like brilliant. And of course, it was dropped, and I was just like, it's not a drill. You know, I am on the Formula One YouTube channel, and I think they said it was one of the best performing F2 videos they've ever done.
Yeah.
And I think their preseason guide, it outperformed that in like, 18, 19 hours. I was like, holy crap. That's brilliant. And it bodes well for the future, of course, for content creators.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a wild ride, and I loved every minute of it.
Well, and I think also, as I said to you a little bit earlier, that the path for Formula 2 and Formula 3 now is changing, and they're reaching into new different audiences with stuff like you do in that video specifically. So it's good for them to be able to tap into content creators to do that. I mean, I've spoken to Sam Barker, who's the social media manager for Formula One, legend of a dude. He's Australian, of course. He's come from V8s and into that space, and I still chat with him about stuff, and he's not. It's not that corporateness of what Formula One used to be. They're very open now, and that whole liberty thing, I think, has been absolutely phenomenal for them. Campy probably wants to ask you a question about it, one certain New Zealand driver, but I'll preface it by this question with, it wasn't the typical, F3, F2 entry then into F1. And it was almost an unfortunate time for him because he seems to be an absolute bloody legend of a guy with a balcony that is on a good part of the Monaco track. But Campy, would you like to ask a question?
Look, you can talk about the Kiwi drivers in F2 and F3 because there's a few of them. I think there was more than there was a few Australians at the moment. You got some good guys coming through, but Mr. Brendan Hartley, I was a genuine fan of that guy. He didn't take the traditional route. I think, look, he got beaten by Pierre Gasly that year that they raced together. But Hartley just seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time talk about bad luck. I think he just had the worst luck. And in hindsight, seeing how badly Albon, Kvyat, Pierre Gasly have shit the bed in the top team, do you think Hartley, in hindsight, if he had got that extension on his contract, would have done all right?
I mean, the thing for me was that I was obviously very happy when a New Zealander was back on the grid, because the last one was Mike Thackwell back in 1984, who was a very big missed prospect. But, Hartley almost had Chris Amon's luck. It was just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Did you run over a black cat and then hit it with a hammer? Like, what did you do to get this luck?
Yep.
I mean, there was no doubt Brendan had the worst luck ever, but my whole thing was that I look at things indiscriminately. I do have a Kiwi passport, but if there's someone better, there's just someone better. Like for example, you take the current Red Bull situation of their junior drivers. Now, people will automatically think, oh, well, I've raved about Liam Lawson, and I still do. And, both Kiwis, he should be the next one in line. I'm like, no, Yuri Vips. And then maybe Liam, although right now, Dennis Helger is pledging a good case.
Yeah, he is.
And if Jahan Daravala does well with Prema next year in F2, because Jahan's a better driver than what he's letting on, then, just personally, from my viewpoint, whoever's the better driver at the time should just be in there. And back in 2018, if you had to ask me who to pluck out of the former Red Bull catalog and throw in there, I would have said Antonio Felix Costa, because he was an extremely unfortunate case not to get in Formula One.
Yep.
But they brought in Brendan. And my thing with Brendan was that he did very well in Formula 3. But then he went to Formula Renault 3.5 and he got decimated by Daniel Ricciardo. And he just didn't look at home in the higher powered junior Formula cars. He then went to GTs. And the way he drove, his racecraft, everything like that, it better suited for the GT role.
Yep.
He was brought into Formula 1. I was like, okay, let's just see how it goes. And he had the worst luck ever, but it just didn't look like he was on the same level as Pierre. I was like, just rather we have someone who could be on that level. It was just, could he have done better back in 2009 if he would have stayed on a little bit longer and gotten the drive ahead of Jaime El-Jiswari? Maybe.
Possibly. Yep.
Possibly. We don't know. But yeah, did I judge him too harshly? I don't know. Maybe I did, because I'm pretty harsh with some New Zealand drivers. But
it's the complete opposite to the way we operate, mate. We are 1,000,000% biased to the nth degree. Even when we're performing shit house, we're still going to go to bat in for him. And
you Aussies have got some good drivers coming up.
Yeah,
Jack Doohan's also there in the background, but
yeah.
I got my reservations on Jack Doohan. Let's just say that.
Well, Callan Williams has got some new sponsorship and is apparently Perth's next Formula One driver. That was the tagline that I saw.
Oh, boy.
So that's...
oh, God.
Yes, anyway.
Callan Williams, the next Formula One driver for Perth.
That's just Oscar Piastri.
We should read The Guardian for the tabloids, shouldn't we?
Oscar Piastri is it. If DR can't pull it together in some miracle for McLaren next year...
he will, don't worry.
I know. Of course he bloody will. But if he doesn't, if something was to happen and he fades away into his new business pursuits, I think Oscar obviously is the future. And as you say, I mean, from a point of view now for hyping up the next generation, DR is well and truly hyped around the world thanks to Drive to Survive and his characterization through there, especially to the US. But Oscar's just silently doing not a lot, in social media, but gaining a lot of attention for the right reasons, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, he's quite a bloke on social media for sure, but I mean, he's still a cool guy, at the same time. And I don't it's a bit like with Max Verstappen, I suppose. He doesn't do too much on social media, but I don't think any of these guys are obliged to do too much on social media as outside of, their commitments. I'm really only concerned about how they do on track. And Oscar's, I wouldn't say he's the absolute most speed demon, shall we say. He's not someone who over one lap I would say go out there and bring every last ounce of this thing. But sometimes you don't need that. And I think someone who kind of encapsulates that kind of not apparent speediness but still gets results is Alain Prost, And, he's undermined greatly, more than he should be. And he has so many world titles to show for it. And I think that's why Alain likes him. Probably reminds him of himself. Just needs to break his nose and everything will be just as was.
Well, Josh Revell, thank you so much for joining us on Lakeside Drive. It has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and get to know a little bit more about your story. And if you don't know what Josh is all about after that chat, well, have you even been listening? But you should go across right now to his YouTube channel. Check him out. Definitely well worth a watch. And Josh, mate, thank you again. It's going to be great to see what 2022 brings. And maybe we can have a chat next year in the midst of these new regulations.
That's good, mate. Thanks for having me on.
And a massive thank you to you two for listening. And if you are on Apple Podcasts, please consider leaving a rating or review. It all helps. We are serving the algorithm after all. And this is our 4th season of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast, if you can believe. There's plenty more to come like this interview this year. Freya and I will be searching the globe for people to talk to in a Formula One sense. Why don't you let us know who you'd like to hear from? Send us a DM on Instagram, or you can drop us an email. All of the links are in the description below. And if you're not yet part of our Discord server, well, what are you doing? Jump across there right now. Join a community of like-minded, good, healthy, happy, conversational people. And we love to have you over there. But it is time to say goodbye. We'll see you very soon for the next episode of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast.